calling the meeting to order. Can we have a roll call, Mr. Galavita?
Present.
Here.
There you go. Dr. Genovese.
Here.
Dr. Lilliston.
Here.
Mr. Peters.
Here.
Dr. Resnick. Mr. Slotman. Dr. Stiliano.
Here.
Ms. Williams-Galliano.
Here. Wonderful. Please join me in the flag salute. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Hopewell Valley Regional Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof communicated to the Hopewell Valley News, the Times, and the Trentonian on January 7th, 2026. This meeting notice was also sent to Comcast Cable and Verizon Fios. The board reserves the right to enter into executive session during all meetings of the Board of Education. The meeting is being videotaped for the purpose of board review, future reference, preparation of the minutes, and viewing on Comcast Channel 19, Verizon Fios Channel 32, and the school district website, HVRSD.org. Members of the public who intend to participate in public comment, we ask that you sign in prior to speaking. This will assist us with our record keeping. With that said, can I have a first and second to approve the meeting minutes from the January 12th regular meeting?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Seeing none, the minutes are passed. Would love to invite our student rep to share a report this morning or afternoon. Goodness, evening.
Evening.
Which part of the day? Good evening. Good.
Hi everyone. Throughout February, there have been many achievements here at the high school. In the arts, the HVCHS theater program is now preparing for their winter musical Pippin. The first night of the show will be Friday, February 27th, so make sure that you are there and you don't miss it. Additionally, the performing arts programs hosted their performing arts showcase event for TMS 8th graders before they choose their freshman year courses. In our athletics department, the Hopewell Valley Montgomery ice hockey team won their annual Salute to Service game, and the girls basketball team celebrated a wonderful senior night last Friday with a win against Hamilton West. Our swim teams wrapped up their seasons tonight in sectional meets, and our wrestling team is looking forward to continually competing in the CVC Championship. The newest inductees of our National Honor Society were recently inducted, and all schools finished the semester strong with excellent attendance and strong transcripts. This marking period, our student focus groups led by Principal Riley will seek to gather the opinions of students on cell phone usage at the high school and a new nutritional advisory council in partnership with Pontonian, our food service provider. We are so happy to celebrate our wonderful counseling staff for Counselor Appreciation Week last week. We are proud of our students this month and can't wait to see what the second semester will hold. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions from the board?
I have a question. Thank you for the report. Very good as usual. When we changed and kind of expanded the scope of student representatives, one of the things we wanted to start getting you guys engaged in is some of the committee meetings. And I wanted to ask you, we're at about a halfway point. Have you had an opportunity to be at any of the board committee meetings at this point?
So I cannot speak for my co-representative Eileen. Yes, I have been only at Climate Action Committee meetings, which I know that students are involved in through the Youth Environmental Society, but no, I have not been at committee meetings other than that at this point.
So I think maybe an action for all of us is to is we should try and get our student representatives a bit more involved in these things.
Yeah, we did. So our other student representative, Eileen, did come to Ed Program Committee and specifically spoke about student thoughts related to the AI policy implementation, which I found incredibly helpful. So all that to say, yes, it's very helpful to have our student representatives at these meetings, and we should be keeping that at the forefront of our planning. So thanks. Good point, Alex.
Awesome. I am going to, oh, sorry, anyone else checking? Okay, great. We always welcome you to stay and understand if you need to step away. Do so when it's convenient for you. I'm going to forego a report this evening. Anything for you, Dr. Treese?
There we go. I wanted to take a few moments to talk about, to give an overview of our budget retreat as my report. So I'm going to move my head back. Dr. Calafita. See, I just sent you back to school. Listen, you can do it. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Okay, so the board met last week for our budget retreat on the 4th of February, correct? Am I correct on that? And it was an opportunity for us to start having conversations about how we're going to approach budgeting this year. My team is already heavily involved in this work. It's going to be a heavy lift this year, not just for our district, but for all districts. We'll talk about that a little bit more as I get into the budget, our discussion today. I don't have any numbers for you. This is early. We still don't know what we're facing right now. The state has told us to expect flat aid if we're lucky. And we know that most of our budget comes from the tax base here, but we do need and appreciate whatever monies we get from the state or the federal government, how little that is. So right now, those things are up in the air. So my team and I have contingency plans for every contingency plan as best we can. So we start with the mission statement. This is what drives everything that we do. I know things are getting more and more expensive as we move along, but my priority is to maintain the programs and what you've built here in Hopewell Valley for this community as best I can, and also be fiscally responsible at the same time. So it's getting tougher and tougher, but that is our mission. Here is the timeline. So we are now in February, where the board has engaged in work sessions. We may need to add other retreats as we get more and more information about what funding is going to be available to us. I believe we had a very productive session on the 4th where we got to look at and examine some different opportunities that we may avail ourselves of. Also understanding that, yes, we did just pass a referendum, and yes, we have to be cognizant of the taxpayer, but our primary responsibility are our children, so making sure that we maintain as much as possible. Right now, our governor has decided to move her State of the Union, and that's going to push our budgeting process a little bit. While it's not official, and Bob, you can share a little bit about that, we're pretty certain that it's going to be a delay in some of our work. So if you want to just share, because we still need to come to the same place in April, but that's going to move where we're going to have our numbers.
Yeah, by statute, the governor is required to give a budget address no later than the 4th Tuesday of February. We were informed late last week, that she has put forth a bill, or a bill has been put forth on her behalf to extend that message to March 10th, which would mean that the receipt of state aid would be March 12th. The bill does not say when budgets would be due. They're by statute, they're due on March 20th. But typically, if they extend for 2 weeks, then they'll be extending out the due date by 2 weeks. The issue becomes, and the reason why we have a tentative budget adoption on March 23rd is that 2 weeks hence of March 20th is spring break. So we would probably like to be done prior to the district shutting down for that period of time. So as soon as we know what's going to happen, we'll announce it. But what I feel that is the budget, the state aid will be coming out on March 12th
Mhm.
with the budget due 2 weeks hence. But we need to get that done prior to that.
So that is a timeline, and we'll keep you abreast of the board and the community of any changes in that timeline. A quick overview of what our retreat was. This was a retreat. We made no final decisions yet on what cuts need to be made, what cuts will be made. There will always be cuts made every time we look at a budget. Every year, the district looks at ways to cut and pull in our belt because it's getting harder and harder to do this work. This is just part of the what did Bob call it the other day? The death by 1,000 cuts because it's not getting any better. It was really meant to inform the board because school finance is very difficult. It's hard to understand how even the formula is arrived at, who receives what and how. So we spent a lot of time on just talking about what that looks like, how the NJDOE informs us on how we're receiving monies, and sometimes even when we are entitled to money, we don't necessarily get everything we're entitled to based on what they're doing downtown. And then also we're going to, again, I mentioned that there will be additional retreats if necessary. Again, we advertise all of these as we do any time that the board is completely assembled so that the public is, we don't televise those. It's just been past practice so that it's really an opportunity for the board to kick things around. And we don't want folks to think that this is final decision, but it's always open to the public if you would like to join us. So some budget reminders. Again, our constituents are the children of this community. So cuts are difficult because we're taking programs that have attracted people to this school district to begin with. The reason why folks come here is they find Hopewell or West Windsor, Plainsboro, Princeton, or whoever online, and they are attracted to what we're doing. And our approach to educating the whole child and taking care of all of our children and providing rigor for every child and being inclusive for all children, whether they have special needs or not, right? Or whether they need extra support or not. Our commitment to sustainability, all of the programming that bring folks here are the things that I'm fighting to maintain. Although this is getting very difficult. As we talk about making cuts, where the money lies is mostly in my staff. Right? It's mostly salaries. It's mostly benefits. These are real people with their budgets at home and their families at home. So I'm very careful about throwing things up here. We're cutting this or that when we're still in the discussion stage because folks need to maintain their own households. And I don't want teachers that we've recruited, support staff that we've recruited who are very rare now. We have a very shallow pipeline to leave because they're afraid they're not going to have a job. And then we don't cut that position. And now we're trying to fill positions where these qualified folks are not out there anymore. So I'm very careful when I put something out there and say I'm cutting that we really mean we're cutting it. We don't want to do a lot of speculating with people's lives like that. The other thing is when you cut programming, it's difficult to undo it. So there's not like we're going to take a pause on this and then bring it back later. It rarely comes back. It's gone. So we have to be very conscious that this is something that we can give up, that we're willing to give up, because once I cut it, the chances of me bringing it back are going to be slim to none. And then here's the other part. We're facing the unknown. We don't know what the budget's going to be. What I do know is the state of New Jersey has a very huge deficit. I know that most of the money that's sitting in the buckets down at the State House are in education. And at some point, someone's going to dip into that, right? And what does that mean for a district like us where we don't get a lot of funding from them? I don't know. So that's something that we don't know what's coming. We in our gut, we feel that our new governor is going to try to not move things around too much her first year, but what's coming in year two, right? And when you strip yourself down to bare bones, what's left sort of thing. So I don't want to get cut too deeply if we don't need to, because I'm trying to maintain these experiences for our students as long as we possibly can, knowing I don't know what the future holds, but we can always do it. And I want to say that other districts are experiencing the same thing. I've set many workshops around what to do now that we've been having workshops for years, let me just say, where we're talking about approaching this fiscal cliff. And there's little diagrams of a cliff and us hanging on it. Well, we're hanging on now with our fingers and our knuckles are white and we're hanging on. We're over the cliff now and we're hanging. And all of us that I've spoken to are looking at least 5 to some 9% tax increases on the tax base, but just to maintain what little they have, and they've already cut to the bone. So if you put up the next slide, so here are some headlines. I threw this in. The slide deck will be shareable. It should be shared out. These are districts that are in trouble right now because they've gone over the cliff and then some. And Bob, you want to share a little bit about what's going on with some of these districts?
Robbinsville is they're doing a referendum for $5 million just to put back into the base of their budget. They've been cut so much the last several years due to the shift in the funding formula that they feel that they need to maintain their program to go out for a referendum. They've cut things such as their entire varsity athletic program. Their entire athletic program, shouldn't say varsity, their entire athletic program.
All athletics and clubs they're looking at getting rid of. And what's in that referendum question is just, can we maintain our clubs and extracurricular activities for another year? That's how bad it is. They are down to one media specialist for the whole district because that's all we really have to have. They've cut nurses back. I mean, it's just, they've cut over 100 staff members over the course of the last few years. And this is where they are.
Districts like Montclair and Hackensack, they're dealing with situations where they wanted to keep taxes down. They may have under budgeted, and they're right now facing a deficit because they weren't addressing all of the things that they needed to address in their budget. There were some newer BAs in those districts, some more inexperienced BAs that possibly weren't doing things the way they should have been done and communicating the way they should have been done, but nevertheless, they were put in a situation where they didn't have enough money to cover unexpected expenditures, and we'll talk more about that as we get further into it. But the budgets right now are very tenuous. As Dr. Tree says, the fat has been removed from the bone, and now you're looking into real program. The cuts are going to come from real program.
Thank you. And there's other ones here. And these are not all the headlines. I just pulled off some of the ones that are more recent. But we all are struggling, and we all are trying to get any of our leadership's ear. We are meeting and lobbying on behalf of the communities about the taxes being untenable, and just it's really not fair to keep going to the tax base. And in the meantime, this is what we have, and so we're struggling with that. So what are our priorities? On the next slide. Again, we talked about our mission statement already, but I'm trying to maintain as many existing programs and services as I possibly can, knowing that something will have to go this year. And it's really going to be a lot of work to figure out what those things are, and we are doing those things. But understand that I am going to have to kill some of our darlings. Some of the things that we love will have to leave this year, just even if the board supports me in what we need to do, we're going to still have to cut. And we're going to have to cut next year and the year after that if things don't change. We have to continue to provide our rigorous academic progress as much as we can, and we want to meet and exceed the NJSLA as we have in the past. Yes, I would like us to perform better on these assessments than we've been performing, but we do historically and continually outperform the rest of the state in our performance. I'd like to continue that, and that's going to take having qualified staff and having the programs to support that. I need to meet the contractual salaries and benefit obligations that we have. We just negotiated 2 very large bargaining units, and those folks raise, if we just roll that over, which we'll look at on the next slide, already puts the district at a deficit. And again, most of our budget is tied up in faculty, and that's what makes a school is our educators and our support staff. So we constantly are evaluating programs and services and making sure that staff reflect the enrollment and the needs, especially with the new housing coming in. Are we covering what's the enrollment that's coming? Some of those are special education staffing that we absolutely have to accommodate in split sections. If there's regulation around that, if a child comes in and needs a paraprofessional, if they need a nurse, if they need an out-of-district placement, all of these things are unknowns that we don't know about. I know that students are coming. I don't know what needs they're bringing with them. So that's always out there. And then we also try to leave ourselves some room for those contingencies. If we have to add another bus route, or if we have to tuition someone out of district, or we have to hire additional staff to split a classroom because the class size has gotten too large. Those are things that we have to kind of leave ourselves some space for. And quite frankly, there's less and less wiggle room for that. So Bob, do you want to talk through the slide real quickly for us?
The next few slides just talk about revenues on the first slide, expenses on the second side. And these are the things that are making up what pays, basically what pays for our budget. We have that 2% levy cap, and we'll talk at the next slide a little bit what that means to us. 2% is the levy cap as a basis, but there is some ability to increase over that 2%. One is through a health benefit waiver, which simply means they give you a waiver for health benefit costs that exceed more than 2% in a budget year. So if we are increasing at a higher rate than that, there's some waiver that gives you additional space to tax. They're not giving you money, they're giving you the ability to add more money to your taxes. There's also an enrollment increase waiver. That is a calculation. It's based upon our October 15th enrollment report that comes out every year and submitted. They look at what happened from last October 15th to this October 15th. We've grown, as we all know, we've seen it, and they give you money for that. This year it's about $1.3 million in an enrollment waiver. You have the option to take it or not take it, and that's something the board is going to have to address because, again, they're not giving you the money, they're giving you the ability to tax for that money. We've been told, as Dr. Tree says, to budget flat state aid. We were told last year to assume flat or a decrease, and we actually got a 6% increase last year. We should have gotten more, but they capped everybody at a max of 6%. Again, this year, conservatively, we're leaving it flat. We don't know what's going to happen at the state level. Federal aid, we don't get much, but we're being told to budget that as 75% of this year's number. Most of our federal aid goes to special programs. Our Title I program for that deals with students with learning loss, and Title II and Title IV, which deals with professional development and character education, things like that. And also our IDEA funding. That's where it's most critical to us. That's close to $1 million in funding for our special education tuition, out-of-district tuition students. That would be a huge loss to us if that was not kept flat or better. We also generate some money locally through selling of tuition seats, mostly at the special education level. We also do accept some regular education tuition. We used to do that more when we weren't growing as much. We are not really accepting a regular tuition right now. We do rent out our facility to local groups, mostly athletic groups and adult groups. They do soccer, they do badminton, basketball, all those kinds of things in our buildings at night. And last year we implemented athletic and co-curricular fees. A positive note to that, and while there was a charge to folks, we did not see any drop-off in participation this year, and we did have families take advantage of the waiver, so we were happy that we weren't discouraging kids from trying out and coming out for our clubs and activities. And transportation fees, which goes to support students who do not qualify as per state guidelines for tuition or for transportation. But it also, we do sell seats on some of our special education runs to other districts who are going to the same place and we're driving through their community. For example, we may drive through Lawrence on our way to a school, and if they have a student who can ride our bus to go to the same school, we'll sell a seat to them. In the same token, they sell seats to us going the other way if they're going in an opposite direction. So we try to save money through those kinds of transportation fees. And the use of surplus, we've talked about this before. Surplus is money that's left over at the end of the year. We do have some of that money placed into our budget. This year it was somewhere in the area of $2.7 million, which means we're taking out of our budget $2.7 million to roll into next year. So we're robbing from this year to go into next year. Right? It seems like, and Mark always laughs at me when I say that, but it seems like not a smart way to do things, and we're trying to get off of that reliance. But again, with the amount of taxes we're allowed to raise and trying to be cognizant of what it's doing to the local taxpayer and the amount of state and federal aid we get, sometimes that is a necessary evil to maintain the programs that we have become used to having. On the expenditure side, these are the things we're dealing with. The high high in impact items. Inflation continues to hit us, whether the governments are saying it's there or not. We are really seeing it happen in our energy expenses. The supplies that we've bought for years and years and years cost more, and the services we've been using, boiler inspections, for example. You think a basic boiler inspection, the cost for those have gone up by a third or even more on just basic things that we have to do to keep the buildings open and safe. Health benefits, Dr. Treese mentioned that. That's health benefits and salaries are the things that drive 85% of our budget. Health benefits are increasing about 20%. Okay, we all saw the commercials last night at the Super Bowl for the GLP-1 drugs. Now they're going to be pills. Before it was a discouragement because people had to give themselves an actual shot with pills. It's just going to be adding into that drain on our budget. Curriculum is what we do, right? It's what we do here. We want to make sure we're providing the best curriculum, the best materials, the best instruction for our students. And we've hampered that department the last couple of years with the inability to pay for curriculum writing. It's being done in a different way than it's been done before. Transportation is basically a requirement. All the transportation services we provide are by mandate. You must transport someone to school if they are greater than 2 or 2.5 miles away from school. We've started to charge for the courtesy transportation. People aren't pleased with it, but it's not a required service. So, to try to cut costs, we've charged for it. Property and casualty insurance is still very volatile. We've had disasters all throughout the country. We've had fires. We've had floods. All of those things, while they aren't happening to us, affects the greater property and casualty market. And while it's not increasing at the same level as health benefits, it's still going up somewhere in the low double-digit ranges. And we do market that every year. We bid it out, and the rates that we're getting are not going down. Facilities and maintenance. Now, I put this on here because there are things that were not addressed in the referendum that we're going to have to deal with over the next several years. We hope that those costs go down, but even this weekend, many of you got an email that said we had an issue with technology. The wind blown, the extreme cold and the wind blown snow yesterday caused a coil to freeze up on the air conditioner that is dedicated to our server unit. So again, that had to be repaired. We're not sure what the damage was yet, but that's going to have to be addressed. And there's going to be things around the district that are going to need to be addressed over the next 2 years before they can become replaced. Special education, as we said, continues to grow. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Staffing, again, it's what we do. The majority of we're using to educate your students is in staff. Technology, we'll talk more about that later, but we have an infrastructure that's aging. Technology, as you know, a lot of times when you're buying a computer or a laptop, it's obsolete within a year after you bought it. And we're dealing with that as well, and there'll be agenda items tonight that is going to try to address some of that. And we know that there's growth coming in the Valley. We've experienced it. We expected that to continue on for the next 5 to 6 years of growth, and we're hearing about other programs of development that are going on in the borough, each of the 2 boroughs as well. So it's a good thing that we're growing. We're getting a support from the state for our growth, but we need to be prepared for that when we budget. So we talked a little bit about staffing. Now, we talked about cap, all right, 2% of the levy that we raised last year. Simply increasing our levy by 2% is $1.8 million. Our salaries are going up $1.6 million. So that's taking up pretty much our entire cap in just salaries. We haven't even talked about health benefits or insurance or supplies or any of those other areas that we mentioned on the previous page that are driving our budget. We still are dealing with a national teacher shortage. Candidates can come in and they can dictate kind of where they want to be placed on the guide. And we have rules that govern that. And we've lost candidates, a few, by not being able to meet their requirements. They came in and they said they want to be placed here because that's what they want to make. But by law, we have to have a process in place. And TANA has that in place. And we have had to turn away good candidates because we couldn't meet their salary demands. Never happened before. In the 20 plus years that I've been in this district, we've never had people turn us away to go to somewhere else because we couldn't pay them enough.
Yeah. And conversely, you have veteran staff that are not afraid to leave their districts. It used to be if you had tenure in a district, you didn't go. Now that might be the only candidate you get for a job, and you have to pay them where they belong on their salary guide. So you have this idea of what we used to call breakage in education, where you have a more seasoned staff member leaving, and you have a younger one coming in, and there was that breakage because when you come out of college, you're not making a whole lot of money, right? Those days are gone. So that's really makes it difficult for us to plan that. Just because you have retirees like we will have on the agenda tonight doesn't mean that it will save the district money, unfortunately.
And we're seeing more reverse breakage now. We're seeing that somebody's retiring and we're hiring somebody at more money
Yes.
than the person who held the position. And our contract settlements, we are happy to have settled with our two largest units. It gives us at least a starting point of knowing that we have the majority of our staff settled contract-wise. But contract settlements are not following the laws that the state has put forth with CAP. There are no settlements in the state that are settling anywhere near 2%
No.
right now. It's just not happening. Special education, again, I'm going to pass this off to Paulette there for a second to just touch a little bit about what she's dealing with special education.
I'm holding it. Hi. So currently we have 49 students who are in out-of-district placements. And the tuitions for the out-of-district placements are going up substantially. In fact, I just received a bill for last year's tuition from one of our out-of-districts that, again, this can just happen randomly where it's like an additional $18,000. We have and continue to build our programs. A big part of our literacy program, K through 8th grade especially, but we actually have teachers K-12. We've worked really hard to train them in Orton Gillingham, which is part of the structured literacy approach that is linked to the science of reading, which is instrumental in supporting students with language-based learning disabilities. So we do formal training for our teachers so they're up to date and able to provide the science of reading and the quality instruction that our kids need to be able to read to learn. Our code, as Bob was saying, is really important and for those of you that know me, I'm a rule follower, so we have to adhere to specific guidelines related to how many students can be in a resource room classroom. And there's a set amount in our New Jersey code, 6A. And then if we go over a certain number, then we have to put a paraprofessional in the classroom. That's part of the code that's non-negotiable. We also provide applied behavioral analysis training and classrooms for our students who have more involved types of developmental disabilities, specifically with autism. That involves training, data collection, and really monitoring their needs. And then we've worked really hard to bring students back in district, and part of our retreat, Hope, right, you brought this up, where we did a comparison of if we did not have, for example, a multiple disabilities classroom, what would that tuition look like and that cost to the district? So I took 2 out-of-district schools that are New Jersey Department of Ed approved and accredited schools. And we have 48 or 49 students who are in our special class for students with multiple disabilities, K-12. And if they were to go out, the total amount of tuition was $8 million compared to what we do internally in programming, which is roughly around $200,000. That doesn't include physical therapy, occupational therapists, or speech therapists. That was just teachers, their core teachers, and the paraprofessionals. So that, I think when we are building our programs, we are providing education for our kids within their neighborhood, which I feel is really important. And we're providing really good quality education so that they can really set goals for their post-school outcomes. The other big challenge, though, that we're facing is the bus contracts, which Bob will talk more about. That's when we have our students go to out-of-district placements. We've got the tuitions that can range anywhere from $70,000 up to $300,000 per year to educate. But we also have to pay for that transportation cost, which is in the thousands.
Yeah, that's a good point. And again, the reason why I wanted Paula to speak about that is because there's a huge savings in being able to develop programs in-house. Sending them out not only costs a lot more money, but the transportation contracts driving them out too, they're in the $70,000-$80,000 range for 2 or 3 students on a bus. It's just more economical, and we're doing the best we can to bring those students back as much as we can.
And I think I would argue that we do a better job in a lot of cases. So, you know, they're in their home neighborhood. The rigor is here. Sometimes in those, and when you place them out of district, they're dealing with students coming from all the districts, and our kids are capable of much more academically. So as much as we can build it, that's really the least restrictive environment for these children, for all of our children.
So I mentioned transportation briefly. We do transport almost 3,000 students every day. Our bus route renewals, we expected an increase of about 3.6% this year in our contracted runs. We did get notice that the majority of our runs will be would be renewed at no cost, which is helpful to us this year.
No cost increase.
No cost increase, right? There'll be costs,
They're going to get their money.
but not increases. And again, we still struggle with the ability to attract and retain drivers. We pay more than a fair wage, I believe, but we're just not getting folks who want to drive a school bus. They can get equal pay driving an Amazon truck or any number of other jobs now for those things, and it's hard to get folks to take these jobs. Fuel, we've been very fortunate. Our bid that we are a part of with the township offers us fuel at well below the diesel and gasoline prices you see at your gas station, but parts are now costing more than they've ever had to before. We went out to bid for buses, and you'll see some buses on the agenda today. It used to be that a 24-passenger van, not a full bus, a half-size van, was about $80,000. Now they're $140,000, and they take a year to get. So again, that's the cost, the inflationary cost that we're seeing in something that is almost doubling in price in 5 years. Maintenance, again, the maintenance and repair all cost more, and the ability to get parts is becoming harder and harder. Impact from new developments. We've added at least 4 new routes, regular ed routes. We've probably also added another 4 to 5 special education routes since the last 18 months. Again, a lot of these were unbudgeted, and we had to scramble and pull money from other places to cover those because, again, we're required by law to provide that service. And just a note to everybody that there is a charge of almost $1,000 a seat for courtesy busing. The actual cost of a courtesy seat is somewhere in the area of $1,400. Mm-hmm. Again, we talked a little bit about insurance, expecting a 20% increase in our health, RX and dental plans. While that seems a 20% increase seems a lot, we are still running well below what the state is charging for health benefit plans. The state plan is usually the plan of last resort for districts who can't self-insure themselves or can't enter a private market like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, or some of the other major health carriers. That's where they go if they can't.
And those folks are facing a 31% increase.
Correct.
Anyone who's on the state plan. Mm-hmm.
Okay, there is an opportunity to use a waiver to help defray some of those costs, to allow some more costs to be left into the regular budget and not in the health benefit budget. That's something that the board is going to have to address because, again, they're not giving us money. They're giving us the ability to spend more money. Property and casualty insurance, we are expecting an increase, not to be as high as the health benefit increase. We're doing relatively well with our claims history, our workers' comp, and I'm knocking on the table right now. Our workers' comp claims are high, but they're down from years in past. They're still higher than I'd like them to be, but they're down. We are a member of a consortium of about 360 districts that go out to bid for rates together. The buying power there helps keep rates lower. Again, we talked about this in the opening, but again, I put some of the types of repairs that we continue to find that we're dealing with, things that won't be addressed in the referendum. Trees, there's that the ash trees are dying. We had a lot of ash trees on our property. They cost upwards of $1,000 a tree to pull down. If we're told by the township comes by and they inspect and if they notice trees, and if we notice trees on our own, we have to remove them. It's a safety issue. Playground issues are always equipment that's failing and needs to be repaired. Electrical issues throughout the district. We do our own electric and lighting work. We're fortunate that while there's a cost to it, at least we're doing it on our own. Again, throughout this winter, we've been dealing with frozen lines, hot water heaters breaking, pipes breaking. Again, a bad winter for that. Sewer line, we have a sewer line that failed at Stony Brook that we're replacing this summer. Again, unplanned. Under the hallway corridor, just like Timberlane was a few years back. Everything is costing more and more money. Flooring used to be, you could do a room for $5,000 or $6,000, replace either the flooring or the carpeting. Now it's $30,000 for a regular classroom to replace the flooring. The numbers are astronomical and hard to believe. Technology is something that we're dealing with. It is involved in everything we do. All right, everything from the strobes in our buildings, the Wi-Fi hotspots, to all the devices, the thousands of devices that we have on our network each and every day. That infrastructure is starting to age out, and it's not that it's broken. It's just that they don't support it anymore, and that's the issue I have with technology. Is it's planned obsolescence. Even though the device is working, you can't use it anymore. You try to tell your 81-year-old father that his laptop doesn't work anymore because Apple says it's not going to work anymore. It's just they don't get that. Something that's also shifting, and I spoke with our director of technology late last week, is we can't even do things on a buy-it basis. Everything is subscription now, and that subscription goes on and on. It doesn't. You can't buy it and then 4 years you're good without doing it anymore. Now you got to pay every month, or they turn you off, and there's no grace period. You miss one payment, or your payment's late, they turn you right off. So it's the market is becoming increasingly challenging to maintain everything that we're trying to maintain, and all the things that are going over our servers on a daily basis. So again, a challenge that we need to find money in our budget to cover these aging systems. So as Dr. Tree started with, to get to a budget that we feel is responsible to the community and shows that we understand that an $84 million referendum was just passed. There are things that are going to have to be cut from this year's, from what we have now, it's going to need to be cut. And where those are coming from, these are some of the things, as Dr. Treese mentioned, these are not finalized. This is a list that we shared with the board of where we would start, where we would need to start, not where we're going to end up, because we've taken that already. Where we're going to need to end up, and this, goes into a lot of the things that we've held dear in this district.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So the next steps on my last slide here is, again, as we wait for the governor's State of the Union address and where we will be with our final numbers, my team and I will continue to work on where opportunities to cut if we're at this level, that level, or whatever level when we get the final numbers. What programs can we eliminate and still maintain the integrity of our district? And then there's also conversations that we're having with your elected officials on, and they are gatekeeping on behalf of their neighbors and themselves. Right? They also are taxpayers here in the district, to make sure that we're being responsible if we decide to avail ourselves of a portion of or any of the waivers that will be available to us. We will have monies that we can access through the enrollment waiver. We have had that much growth, and also the way healthcare is through the roof. We will have monies that we can access through a healthcare waiver and make a legitimate argument that we need that relief here as a district. But again, that's a conversation that we're going to have deeply with all of the committees on what we feel that we can live with and what we just absolutely cannot. And we'll keep you abreast of those conversations along the way. But again, until we have some real numbers, I'm really careful about putting numbers out, because when folks see those, they put a nail in the, like, this is a number, and then the number comes out and it's something different, which we don't have a control over. And then we're confusing folks. So we just want to let you know what's being discussed. And we're making several different budgets depending on what it looks like. So any questions from the board?
Early in your presentation, you said you meet in committees and have been meeting, and we're talking about the cliff. I'm assuming you meant with other superintendents, but you didn't say.
Yes, with other superintendents. So we're all rocking in the room. We have retired superintendents that are glad they're retired, that are trying to give us anything that's in their bag of tricks that they possibly have. And we're all kind of in the same place. And each one of our roundtables are having these conversations. I sit in a roundtable with superintendents. Mr. Calavita sits in one with other BAs who are pulling their hair out. Ms. Smith sits in one with HR. All of us sit on roundtables, and we're all facing the same struggles. This is not a good time for education in terms of budgeting.
Yeah, I had a conversation with Mark the other day, and what the state feels is that they're providing relief in the waivers, and what we look at it is that they're providing us a mechanism to increase taxes, and that's not what the goal was. What we're hoping is that the state listens to what we at the ground level and who are managing these budgets, and not other folks who don't have an idea of how a law or a resolution affects the people on the ground. And that's where we stand with our health benefits. We're kind of been hamstrung with those kinds of things. Those kinds of mandates harm if you don't understand the end game for that. And that's while the state says, hey, there's a waiver that you can kind of dig yourself out of this, somebody's got to pay for that. And that's what we're struggling with right now.
And things like, and I know lots of bills come across their desk, and you get somebody in your ear, like, for example, healthcare. If I could negotiate with my staff, and I'm sure they would pay $10 more on copay to keep the district intact, we can't have that conversation. We can't have the conversation, can we put guardrails in place about who's on the GLPs, right? Because some people do need that. But can we put things in place like, you have to see a dietitian, you have to make sure that these things are in place, who's getting this? None of that we can negotiate at all until the end of this year. And now that we've negotiated our contracts with these two bargaining units, we can't negotiate that again until their contracts are up. So it keeps pushing things down for us to have these conversations. We were small business owners, my husband and I. We moved all the time the co-pays and the prescription pays to keep afloat, because it was imperative that we made sure that our staff had the same level of health care that I had as an educator. And that closed our doors as a business. So this is where we are in education right now, because my husband would just refuse. Everyone here will have the same health care I have. And to do that, you have to be able to negotiate some of it. And even then, it's a killer. So things like that are out of our hands. And these bills that they kind of get talked into, or these things they get, they agree to with the union, and it's not well thought out, is coming back to bite us now.
Maybe say a comment or two. So I, first of all, just want to say thanks to Dr. Teresa and Bob and the administration for starting this process with us. I think several months ago, the Finance Committee made a decision to have a discussion about thinking differently this year about the budget, and we've asked Dr. Teresa and those on the administration on several things, and thus far, I think, without speaking for the committee, we've all been pleased, which is great, so thank you for that. I think the reality that Dr. Teresa talks about and that Bob talks about and others on the administration, I think is the same thing that some of us have talked about for several years, right? I often joke that from year one to now of me being here on the board, I've become more and more of a pessimist about just the financial outlook of things. And it really has little to do with the administration sitting here, if at all. It has much to do with what Dr. Teresa just said, which is we can't govern a budget locally right now. And the challenge that creates is exponentially more important when you have inflation and all of these things that we have no control over. So I think that this is just the beginning, and we have a lot of discussions to be had. I appreciate the whole board coming to the retreat last week to talk about it, and I think there's some creative things that we want to do. But rest assured right now that we are trying to keep business as usual, the same way that we talked about it during the referendum. But there's going to be challenges that we're all as a community going to have to face together, and then make the decision to cut together too, with the hopes that when things are better, we can get back to that too. So again, just thank you guys. Really appreciate the work that you've put in so far, and I know we've got a lot of work to do.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Treason, Mr. Calavita. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. With that, we're going to go ahead and open the first public comment. This is on any item. Members of the public are invited to address the board on any matter for a maximum of 3 minutes during this portion of the meeting. You are asked to state your name, address, and municipality. In response to your comments, the Board of Ed may respond or direct the superintendent to do so. The board may also opt to take the matter up at a future meeting so that the matter is researched by the district administration. With that, I'll pass the baton to my vice president for timekeeping.
Sure. So as Ms. Williams-Galliano said, you have 3 minutes for public comment. When you've reached 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I'll hold up the yellow sign and then flip it to red when you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Public comment is now open.
Hi, good evening. My name is Marian Labos. My address is 10 Model Avenue, Hopewell. And wow, what a presentation on the challenges of the budget. Thank you for so diligently looking into it. And I know whatever hard decisions are made, they are not going to be made lightly. But in a lighter note, I've been wanting to make it up here for the last few months and I haven't had a chance. But I wanted to share some of our most recent progress with the Eco PTO. I am the Eco PTO co-treasurer, and as the last time we probably were in front of you, we were recently approved over the summer. We've become an incorporated nonprofit in the state of New Jersey. In the fall of 2025, Green Matters Incorporated generously funded our grant application to continue restoration of a wetland meadow at Hopewell Elementary School. We collaborated with Dr. Bertel to use the SEL Day of Gratitude on November 26th to bring the entire school outside to show our gratitude to our earth and to the Hopewell Elementary campus and community. During each period, students were greeted in the meadow by volunteers. We practiced mindful breathing. We prepared ourselves for the activity, and we talked about food webs and the birds that depend on the plants we were planting. Then each volunteer assisted groups of students to plant one small plant. And Eco PTO is very appreciative of the 20 plus volunteers that included parents, grandparents of AGS students, local businesses, the Sourland Conservancy, FOVOS, and Mercer County Park Commission. In January, Eco PTO successfully co-hosted the second annual native seed sowing extravaganza at our own Central High School. This was a great community building event. Participants had access to native plant experts from the Hopewell community, including the Native Plant Society of Mercer County, Hopewell Valley Gardens for Wildlife, FOVOS, and Sourland Conservancy. Hundreds of native seed-filled jugs were sold, and the proceeds have gone to purchase our first insurance and also as well as our 501c3 application. So, yes, we're very proud of these small accomplishments, and we look forward to being, partners in more great initiatives within the school system. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to give a lot less organized statement. I am here in part. So I'm here as a parent. I'm here as a pediatrician.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sorry. Suze Politsky. scribbled down my address. Suze Polinsky. I'm a parent. I'm a pediatrician. I've spent a lot of time in the last 5 years working with a lot of you as a member of the Digital Wellness Initiative. And I know that later tonight we'll have a second read on a policy that I think is going to do some good things. I think will give our high school kids the opportunity or the punishment of needing to interact awkwardly with each other as humans. Right? They're something that our kids are missing out on that we all had to do is the messy process of having to look at people and talk to them whether you want to or not because you're stuck in the same room, because you're stuck in the same building. And I think as a pediatrician, it's essential, right? Like if we're depriving these guys, because if you got a phone in front of you that you can look at and pretend you're doing something, it's really easy to not speak with the other humans around. And if that's happening from the time you're 4 or 5, when are you ever going to sweat bullets so that you could stand up in front of a group like this, right? Because you have to be willing to feel silly. You have to make missteps. You can't become resilient. You can't become the kid that we say in our mission we're trying to raise, right? A resilient kid who can try stuff out and fail and try again, unless you have these opportunities. And it seems small, putting your phone away in the hallways, but it really is an important piece. So I thank you. At the same time, it feels trivial to be talking about devices in light of what's going on in our country right now. I've got high schoolers and I've got friends teaching in St. Paul and Minneapolis who are standing on corners at 6 in the morning, walking kids into buildings, and then out there at 8 o'clock at night trying to walk them home and delivering food to houses because parents are afraid to come out. I work in Trenton. I have patients who don't come to appointments because they're afraid. I have patients who've lost family members. There's a thing going on in our world that our kids should be talking about, and I'm super grateful that Principal Riley put together a focus group to talk about the cell phone policy, right? Because that's important to kids. A big change is going to happen in the high school for them, and I want them in groups fighting about this policy. And I'm asking myself and my neighbors and this group, how are we supporting students? How are we supporting families? How are we supporting teachers to have these hard conversations? I want to make sure that we are, because I don't want our kids to leave this building without having to make some of those hard conversations.
Anyone else? Seeing none, any comments from Dr. Treese?
Yes.
Or the board?
First, I want to thank the ECO PTO report. I know I was invited, and I don't know, Dr. Resnick, if you were invited also for their next meeting is going to be, and I don't know if you can attend. It's this Friday at 8:45 at Hopewell Fair is where it's going to be.
I was invited. It's going to be a little bit tough for me.
Yes.
But I've met with them, and
Yes, and I'll make a point to
and
be
I'm
there. Right now,
very glad to and see them.
yes, but I'll be there, so I'll make sure that I get a report on your behalf because I'm trying to keep my schedule clear right now so that I can get there, and it's in my calendar. So thank you for that. You are doing amazing things, and I know they're going to be on the cover of a magazine soon. Very exciting. Yes. So thank you for all of your continued work, and I know we're trying to spread you across the district, so any parents out there at the other schools, we need the other schools involved in your work, so thank you. And then Dr. Polinsky, thank you for your kind words. Thank you for leading the charge on digital wellness. We had she's a committee member. She's given us a lot of valuable advice, and she basically runs the committee on behalf of the Hopewell Valley Municipal Alliance. We just had a screening of Screenagers, a kid version. We had 53 parents come, and they brought was over 20 children. When we came to the Q&A, the kids had all the questions, and they were calling the parents out about their use of tech. But it was amazing, and the parents are engaged in this conversation, and we know that we have to do a better job with these screens, including how much we're using them in our classrooms. And so that's one of the things that we're attacking. Next is looking at, are we too much on the computer in class? And I would say yes. Yes, they need to learn how to use this technology, but I don't want the technology babysitting the class, right? It needs to be used thoughtfully. When we went one-to-one, this was not supposed to be, what is this now, $400 number 2 pencil, right? It was supposed to be, how am I assessing kids in real time and then adjusting my instruction, and you shouldn't be on it all day. So that's something we're going to be attacking next. We're doing too much of this. On another note, we do have resources in place for our students who, what's happening in Minneapolis and here, because we have students here who have lost their parents, right? We have students that are living in fear here, and they are coming to school because they feel safe here. Because of the work we're doing, we're meeting with families, they have support, they know the resources that we have in place for them, and they know the ways that they can protect their families. So we are doing that work, and we have such a small number here. We're able to put our hands around them and make sure that they have the legal and the information that they need support. So yes, we are having these conversations, and our kids are coming to school. They are not coming to school in Trenton and Ewing and Hamilton and some of the other places. They don't feel safe, even though they have those resources there as well. They just don't feel safe. I can say that we do here. Our kids do feel safe, and we're going to continue to have those conversations to make sure that we support all of our families. So thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll just add on EcoPTO as the board liaison. I had the pleasure to interact with them. So I think that's a great bunch of people, at least in the leadership. And I'm happy to see you guys actually doing stuff while you're still putting in place, you know, the logistics, the non-profit thing, the insurance, and all of that stuff. It's really good to see you actually start doing stuff in the community. So,
All right, seeing no other comments from the board, we'll close public comment. Are there any old business items so we need to touch on? Seeing none, I need a first and second to approve the consent agenda items. All in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Seeing none, consent agenda items are passed. We'll go ahead and move on to our committee reports, starting with finance and facilities.
Okay, thank you. So finance and facilities, we met this month. This was coming off of last month's board meeting. The purpose of that meeting was to allow for the architect to be able to talk with us more about their proposal. For those who tuned in or joined us at the last month board meeting, we had a discussion around that, and we wanted to do some follow-up, which we did. The committee felt comfortable after hearing what they did and hearing a more in-depth response, and we felt like we made the right decision there. So that's a large part of the meeting. As always, the second part of that meeting had a lot of focus on just a brief update on what was going on with some of the facilities-related items, which nothing of major substance to talk about there. The old days on the antenna with the TV, right? Tinfoil. So there wasn't anything major just from the facility standpoint, but I think just maybe echoing a little bit about the facilities discussion that we had on the referendum, it's still going to be really critical that that entire facilities team remains intact as we move forward for a variety of reasons. The biggest being that it's our emergency phone call when we need something done. So we spent a little bit of time talking about that too. And then last, we were talking about prepping ourselves for the retreat that happened last week, which again, we talked about earlier, but appreciate that. And I think that as we move forward in the budget process, we're going to continue to have the dialogue like we did tonight. Anything else that I missed, Dr. Wilson or Dr. Resnick, that you wanted to add? Well, I'm going to do that too, but from the readout. Okay. All right. So at this point, we have some business that we need to do that's on the agenda. So I think I have to move items 9 and 13. 9 through 13, my apologies, into a vote. Can I have a first and a second to do that?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, so what we're going to be ultimately approving tonight is purchasing in advance some of the technology things that Bob and Rosetta talked about in their presentation. The first one is going to be purchasing some Chromebooks that we still do need as we are embarking on this idea of screens. Okay, sorry, it's on the. Thank you, Dr. Resnick. It's one of the things on the list. The second thing that's on the list has to do with a camera system inside of some of the buses that we need to take care of, and then the third piece has to do with some buses. We did hear from Mr. Colavita about this, and I'll let Dr. Resnick talk a little bit more about technology in general, but the reason why we heard about this in between some of the timing of our committee meetings is when it comes to technology today, you got to move fast in order to get it, and that's ultimately what we're doing. Dr. Resnick, did you want to add anything there?
So on the Chromebooks specifically, this went from something that I think Bob was discussing as we need to budget for the next year to something that we need to approve ASAP. And I know I mentioned this at the budget retreat, but I'm just going to repeat this because this is I'm facing this every single day at work, and we have to deal with the price of compute equipment is going up on a weekly basis to a point where on the server infrastructure side, prices are increasing so fast that many vendors have changed their quoting policies from a quote being valid for about a month, which is standard because they get issued to large companies, and large companies need to issue a PO, and nothing moves faster than a month in a large company. Those quotes are only valid for 7 days now, typically 7 calendar days, because they can't keep up with price increases. The price increases are driven by availability. Even if you manage to issue that PO on time, the lead times that, again, on the infrastructure are now 6 to 12 months. It's not as bad yet on the client side, so we're buying client, but the same underlying issues that are impacting the infrastructure are impacting the client side. The fact that there are certain components, and the component that is driving it right now is memory, that is simply not available. The latest generation of memory chips, what I heard, has already been, all of 2026 supply has been allocated. So yes, if we need to make those replacements, it behooves us to lock in whatever price we get now, because the market expectation is this is going to last 12 to 18 months. And the price is just the shortage and the continual price increases. And so we're not going to see a better price in a year. Yeah, and for those of you who are wondering about this, I can give you my personal theory. I compare it to the run on toilet paper when COVID just started. Was it sensible and reasonable? No. But there was no toilet paper to be had, and it was very expensive. And then a year and a half later, there were certain people that found themselves with garages full of toilet paper that they didn't know what to do with. But
we all could have had toilet paper
yes.
if y'all weren't.
Yes, but that being said, because we need the laptops before this ends, we need to act today. For the record, I did not have a garage of toilet paper. I was scratching my head going, what the hell is up with all these people?
All right, so thank you, Dr. Resnick, just for that update. I guess for the board, are there any questions about any of these purchases that we can answer or talk about tonight? So seeing no questions, I guess we have to move this to a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Seeing none, items 9 through 13 are passed.
Bob, so I do have a follow-up question on these items.
Didn't I just ask if there's any questions?
Well, I forgot, but now that we moved, as far as the budget for this year goes, was this something that we're able to do within budget, within the original facilities budget?
Within the transportation and within the technology budget, yes,
Okay.
they're budgeted. What you are doing also, we kind of glossed over that one, is we're not paying for these outright. We're lease purchasing them over 4 years for the Chromebooks and 5 years for the buses.
Okay.
So part of actually item number 9 was authorizing me to go out for a formal lease purchase to pay for these. I don't have the money to pay for all of that stuff within the budget. The lease,
But you have the money for
Yeah.
the first year in this budget.
Wonderful. Thank you. Moving on to personnel.
Thank you. I have one retirement to announce. Mr. Bill Russell, who is a middle school math teacher, is going to be retiring at the end of the year. I did want to say, so having a middle school child, I have heard numerous middle schoolers mention how much they appreciate Mr. Russell as a math teacher, as a coach, and being a middle school math teacher and having praise from middle schoolers often don't go hand in hand. And I think that speaks right to the tremendous impact that he has had 29 years in the district. And so just really wanted to acknowledge that and thank Mr. Russell for his commitment to our children. Otherwise, nothing major. You'll see we have some additional appointments that are listed, a small revision on a job description, waiver of benefits, but all of that is listed in here. So if there's no questions, that's all the updates from me.
I just have a quick comment. All 3 of my kids had Mr. Russell. I'm not sure why we're allowing him to retire. He just won an award for teaching. I feel like once you do that, you owe the district another 5 years. But yeah, he was a wonderful teacher. I can definitely. He is a wonderful
He
teacher.
is,
rather.
and he taught social studies for
Yes.
years when I was there, and we voluntold him to teach math.
In fact, one of my kids had him
Yes.
for both social studies
Yes.
1 year and then math another
Yes.
year.
And it was tough, but he's one of the best, so he will be missed.
So we don't want to vote on it? I'm just joking.
I'm tempted to vote no.
A protest vote. So with that said, we need a first and a second to move all the personnel items. Roll call.
Dr. Genovese,
Yes.
Mr. Capadia.
Yes.
Dr. Lilliston,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
Dr. Resnick,
Yeah, okay. I guess Mr. Russell deserves a retirement.
Mr. Slotman,
Aye.
Dr. Stiliano.
Yes.
Ms. Cotter,
Yes.
Ms. Williams-Galliano.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Marvelous. Okay, we'll be moving on then to education and SEL programs.
Hi there. We met a few weeks ago, and so we had a few presentations. So the first one is that the district has been working with a consulting group called Achievement Network to do an audit of our elementary literacy program. So they have been collecting various data points since the spring until now. Some of those data points include classroom observations, educator and stakeholder surveys. They ran focus groups. They also did a current audit of our materials and assessments for literacy. And so they came to Ed Program because they finished their review to tell us their findings as long as with our strengths as well as recommendations for moving forward. So they highlighted that we as a district have a very strong foundational skills instruction in the early grades with high expectations for students and a strong commitment among educators to identify struggling readers. They identified that there are some misalignments, however. Some of our curriculum was found to be misaligned to the science of reading and lacked consistent scaffolds to support different learners, such as multilingual learners and students with learning and thinking differences. They also suggested that we are over-assessing our students, and they feel that there is a lot of time that's being utilized to assess them when we don't need to spend as much time assessing them. So they have made some recommendations that we need to address high quality, standards aligned instructional materials for reading and writing, as well as to streamline our assessment process. So those were our major findings. You can all see their presentation on board docs, but we are continuing to work with them moving forward now, and we are going to be vetting different programs. So we've identified 5 potential different literacy programs that we're interested in. So we have a group of teachers that we will be working with along with administration, and we hope to maybe do some pilots in the spring, and select a program in May, and then have a rollout in September. Depending upon the cost, it will be either 2 or 3 years of the rollout. But I'm going to invite them back to EdCom in the spring once we have more information about the programming that we're selecting. And just so you know, the funding for this consultant is all through our Title II. Okay, so moving on.
Sorry, just a quick question about that, because I know you spoke to us I think it was the fall at this point, about some of your kind of recommendations around ELA and potential expenses associated with that. Is this the same? Is this separate? I'm just trying to remember how this relates to your conversation in the fall.
So in the fall, I was in terms of our budget conversation, I put in as a line item that we are going to have to earmark different funding for the literacy program. That was it. But so we're basing the selection of that literacy program on this group that we're working with. Okay, so I know that there has been a lot of chatter about the NJ.com rankings that came out a few months ago. And so just to give you some background on this, so there was the summative score that the NJ.com used is derived from different indicators, including ELA proficiency, math proficiency, ELA growth, math growth, and chronic absenteeism, and they were converted into a percentile. There was an article that was shared by Dr. Lilliston, and a lot of what I'm sharing is due to Dr. Lilliston. I know you said not to thank you, but I am publicly thanking you, about the methodology. And so based on the article, there were some questions that were brought up about why Timberlane and Tollgate had lower rankings as comparative to the rest of our schools. So in looking closer at the indicators, the Timberlane lower ranking is due mostly to ELA and math growth in the NJSLA. So overall, like just in a nutshell, our students perform relatively very well in the NJSLA in the elementary, and so they're not seeing as much growth when they go and they take the assessments in the middle school. There is also another concern, which is math proficiency, which I'm going to talk about after that. In terms of Tollgate, the major factor that was impacting their score was just ELA growth on the NJSLA. In the March Ed Program Committee, I will be having Dr. Mary Pankos, who oversees ELA, come and talk about some of the things she's working on in terms of ELA growth and support and proficiency, as well as Mr. Steve Wolfing, who oversees literacy at the elementary level. Okay, and then our last presentation was from Mr. Matt Aran, who is our supervisor of STEM 612. And so he presented a mid-year STEM update highlighting student performance trends in mathematics and science, as well as instructional strengths and areas for continued growth. So across grades 6 through 12, students' performance on the NJSLA and NJGPA remains at or above state averages in most areas, with NJGPA graduation ready rates exceeding the state averages. Middle school mathematics results continue to demonstrate strong preparation for high school coursework. Matt, in addition to looking at the NJSLA data, he did to go around and share the data with teachers to see what they were noticing. And so the teachers identified that there are strengths in certain areas like procedural fluency, computation, algebraic skills, and performance on structured assessment tasks. However, trend data across multiple courses show generally stable to improving outcomes, specifically in geometry and algebra 1. In science, our district performance remains consistently above state averages at both the middle and high school levels, with relative strengths in investigation and evidence-based reading. So teachers did identify that the areas of improvement centered on reasoning, modeling, sense-making, and the application of skills in unfamiliar contexts. In response, his instructional priorities include increasing student discourse, embedding multi-step and open-ended tasks, and strengthening alignment to NJSLA and NJGPA question types. One of the things that he noted was that he took for example, how a question on exponents would be presented on a test in, let's say, 6th grade math, and it's very different than how it would be presented on the NJSLA. So we're looking at those alignments to make sure that the questions are apples to apples. And additionally, he updated us on the progress from grade 5 to grade 6 math placement, and where he plans on using multiple measures for that placement, including NJSLA data, benchmark assessments, IXL diagnostic, and teacher recommendations. And so I'm sorry, I feel like this is the longest update of the world, but just so you all know, in March, I will be presenting in more detail what Matt was sharing in terms of next steps to help support our students in math proficiency, and I will also be sharing what they plan on doing for English.
Thank you. Any questions from the
It's just a really quick question. Could you remind me on the NJLSA about the mode? So are the students taking these tests on the same device that they're native to?
So,
in short, I just want to add to what Dr. Politza said, in that we also discussed building resilience and persistence in our children. So including some of the SEL things that we have been doing in the district, particularly in math, to sort of help with that growth mindset.
yeah, before I get to that question, I'll just follow up. One of the things that Matt said that really struck a nerve with me, and I fully support this, he said that he wants to get as close as possible to eliminating the attitude that the kids have where they go, I just can't do math. Everyone can do well. Everyone can do math at a middle school level, at a basic high school level, and by everyone I mean kids that don't have learning disabilities that are specific to math, right? And a lot of the I can't do math really comes from kind of learned experience, unfortunately. So then to go back to the question I had, so that NJ.com published data, what you said is, and I just wanted to make sure, it's not the ELA math performance per se, it's growth. So it's change from a grade level to the next grade level, right? So if you don't have a significant change, if you don't have a significant improvement, you get a low ranking. Is that the...
Yeah, so if you look at certain districts, like I know there's one in Mercer County that their students do historically low at the elementary levels, but then when you look at their middle school, like it's off the charts, their scores, because there's so much growth in terms of their NJSLA scores.
Okay.
But I do, for Timberlane, their math proficiency was an area of concern. So so it was growth, but then also
okay,
math
so we're
proficiency.
going to focus in on that.
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just want to say something quickly. I want to just say that even our students who may have dyscalculia or have some type of learning difference, they all have the ability to learn math with the appropriate teaching techniques, accommodations, and modifications. Because many of our students end up becoming scientists and engineers, and so with proper supports, they can do that.
Yes.
And math to me is there's a level which is just the basic skills of being able to that you need no matter where you go in life, and I think at those levels the vast majority of people can do that, right? We're not talking about advanced math that kids that go into STEM professions need. That's a different kind of conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Plitzis. This is a really, really helpful report out. I think I had a comment and a question. So one question was about the literacy review and understanding just the next steps for that. And I apologize if you said it and I missed it. But I think what Bob shared earlier is that our curriculum revision budget has been pretty flat. And so one of the key findings that you highlighted, or non-existent. So one of the key findings that you highlighted is that we need to do a better job integrating the science of reading into the curriculum. And so I just want to lift that up for folks as we think about the budget and the curriculum revision component of that, which has not been part of our budget, as I understand, for several years.
So we did put a line item for it this year, but I just want to stress that a lot of the foundational programming that we currently have, like foundations and Heggerty, we are continuing with that. It's more of the units of study. So we're going to be going away from the units of study that we currently have and exploring other curriculum and programs that are addressed more with the science of reading. And so in terms of just next steps, we have identified 5 different programs. We've based it on Ed Reports. Just I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ed Reports, but they do unbiased or very objective reviews of different curriculum, and these have all been identified as high quality instructional materials. And so we are creating a rubric that aligns with our district literacy vision that we spent a lot of time developing in the spring. So I'm very excited about the process. We've involved various stakeholders, so I'm curious where we're going to land.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And then the second comment was just about the NJ.com rankings, which are Department of Education rankings. And just a note to the board, I think that's data that is helpful for us to look at moving forward. I think one of the comments that often comes up when we're looking at our data, which is often, right? We're often looking at our student achievement data is, well, how do we compare ourselves to other districts? How do we know, how do we compare apples to apples? And I think this does provide sort of a nice yardstick in terms of understanding where we rank as it relates to similar districts, because they are standardizing these metrics in such a way that you're sort of comparing apples to apples. So it's not everything. It's not the only thing we should be looking at. And I think it's one tool in our toolbox.
And if I can just add, we're going to have to be patient over the next couple of years with this apples to apples, because the test will be adaptive moving forward. It's by a different company. We don't know what the test items are going to look like. The kids are playing with that. But actually, the test will adapt to the student. So if you get a question wrong, Anita gets a question wrong and I get it right, I will move on to the next one. She may get 2 or 3 more just to be sure that she really doesn't know the answer to that question. So I don't know what this is going to look like and how they're going to measure growth, and how do you compare somebody in Princeton or West Windsor, who are sister districts, Robbinsville, to a student that's like me here, right? So that's going to be tough. But eventually we will get data that we can use, but we just have to be patient with that and just kind of drill down to, okay, what standards or what learning objectives did they miss? And just look at that for a while until we figure this out.
Yeah, I'm going to say when I see things like this, I'm not necessarily worried about the exact comparison to other districts, because it's only part of the story. As anyone who's looked, for example, at college rankings knows, right? There's quite a bit of truth between looking at top 20 colleges and colleges that are ranked in the 500s, but I don't know that there's any validity between a college that's ranked number 15 and number 22 or something like that. But so to me, when there's data that is that just seems off, right? That seems out of place or inconsistent with what we believe there is. I always want to understand the root cause of where that data is coming from. So I'm glad that we figured it out and we understand what those root causes are, and in fact with the work that Matt is doing on the math curriculum, I'm actually pretty optimistic that we're going to be in a much better place because the kind of the detailed analysis and talks for that he gave at the committee meeting was very impressive.
Awesome. Thank you for that update. And I know we talk a lot about curriculum in general, and I feel like we're starting to kind of get under the concerns of the board at large, which not everybody's on the committee. So thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and move on to government and community relations.
So I'm going to out myself. I blew up that meeting. I know Mr. Capadia may have something that he wants to share for government relations, but I was out shoveling snow after I called everybody off and helping the neighbors, and they were like, hello, are we still meeting? And I said, oh, no. And so we tried to reschedule, but everyone's schedule was crazy. So we will meet again next month. But do either of you have anything you want to share in the meantime?
Yeah, we did still end up meeting for the full hour on, it was January 26th. We continued to talk about the various initiatives we've been working on at the state, county, and local level. I think it's first important to start with the state budget request because we've spent today's meeting talking about our district's budget constraints as we're moving forward in the next few months. I want to draw a distinction between this process of requesting a line item and then what's happening with our operating budget, because really the goal of obtaining some of these extra dollars and bringing home some of these extra state dollars through line items, it's really geared towards one-time expenses, which is why last year we had brought that money home for a playground, which is a one-time fixed cost. I very much understand. I've had some parents ask me, why don't we kind of try and bridge some of the gaps that we're seeing in our operating budget with this line item request. But the issue is if we got $500,000 to, fulfill something that we were planning to cut, that's only going to last for the next year. And there's no guarantee, there's very little guarantee that we would get the same amount of money in the year after that. So I just want to add that context. We are still going to move forward with an FY27 state budget request item for mental health resources. We're still finalizing the total dollar amount that we're going to request, as well as the organization that we're going to work with and how specific or how vague we should really be in our request to make sure that we're not, painting ourselves into a corner. And because the governor's budget address is going to be delayed this year, we have a little bit more leeway on when we're going to submit that request, but we are working on it as we move through the next few months. For county level outreach, I know Dr. Shrees, you can provide some more updates, but the TLDR is that the joint assembly that we were planning to run in conjunction with Lawrence, Robbinsville, and Princeton?
Ewing.
It ended up getting pushed off until the next academic year. We had a few dates that we could all of our schools could end up coordinating on, and we couldn't find a venue big enough to accommodate all of the students in the 4th grade classes that we had slated. So a bit of a bummer, but the county executive's office is still looped into the conversation, still very supportive of moving this forward for next year. I think it was ambitious to try and get everyone involved in this first year, so kind of expected, but it's at least we're still all coordinated, and we have a common goal for next year. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Dr. Shrees.
No, I was just really excited that even the McCarter was interested in helping us, but then the space was under renovation, and they had a very limited amount of dates, and they were right in the middle of our testing windows. So even if I could move things, the other district couldn't all accommodate that. But we all are very excited about it, and I'm sure that we'll be able to get the War Memorial next year.
I hope so. And again, to reiterate the real importance of this event, it's really trying to bring our districts together. Mercer County is a highly segregated county, especially in our schools, and we want to make sure that our children are interacting with one another, meeting people from different backgrounds, and are sharing a space of learning and community. Lastly, for the local level, we are still moving forward, and we are nearly done finalizing the survey that we're going to send out to our CHS students, gauging their civic preparedness as well as civic interest in lowering the voting age to 16 for school board elections. The survey is nearly complete. We've gotten some feedback from folks on the board who were interested in the drafting process. And I'm also finalizing it with a couple professors to see if they have any perspectives on how we can best gauge our students' civic preparedness. Welcoming any questions on those 3 initiatives, but we're going to keep chugging along in the next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate everything you're doing. Quick question on the survey. You mentioned some of the board members wanted to see it. Do you mind sharing that just around for everybody to see at some point? Okay.
Yep, we'll do.
Awesome. John, anything for you? Okay. Seeing none. Oh, question. Oh. Yes. Yeah, I thought you had a question. I wasn't sure. Passing on for climate change, like climate action.
Yeah, just real quickly, climate change are in their working groups. And so basically they're working on advancing their different goals and really looking at the overall climate change plan, because it's been a couple of years since they put it together, and some of the things have actually become outdated already. And there's also a lot of sort of large budget sort of things within the plan. So considering where we are with the budget and everything coming up, really taking a look at the plan and seeing how we can move different initiatives forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, do you guys have anyone from the Eco PTO involved in that? Yeah, okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Genovese. Moving on to policy and governance.
All right, so the policy committee met on January 23rd, and we were joined by Ms. Riley and Ms. Baldwin. We reviewed 2 policies and are bringing 1 more policy and regulation for second reading today. So we first reviewed policy 5111, eligibility of resident, non-resident students. This policy addresses the eligibility requirements for students to attend school within our district. It was last revised by the board in June of 2025. So we actually brought this policy for review because a parent within the district inquired about the status of exchange student programs within our district, which pertains to students on J1 visas who are specifically addressed within this policy. So the current policy does allow for J1 visa students, and I recall having this conversation as well when this policy was under review back in June. And this is if the host family is domiciled in the school district at the discretion of the board and the administration. Historically, though, the district has found that these programs can sometimes present some challenges with regards to oversight and support for students. So the district does need to sort of ongoingly consider our ability to support students in these programs based on factors like the fiscal climate, safety, as well as our student enrollment numbers. So at the moment, because of these different factors, the district is not accepting J1 visa students, but the policy does leave the possibility open in the future, which is the way that we decided as a board we'd like it to remain. Of note, the policy does also allow for students with F1 visas to attend school in the district if the host family is domiciled in the district with payment of full tuition and at the discretion of the board and the district administration. These students are actually sort of in a different status in the sense that they're not part of an exchange program, but they're generally here full-time for academic studies, and they often have legal guardianship from the family that they're staying with in the district. So we did review the policy, but after reviewing the policy, we are recommending that it remains as is for now, and Dr. Treese has followed up with the parent who inquired. Anything to add about that from my policy committee colleagues? No? Okay. We also reviewed 1 more policy, which is our policy and regulation 5460 around graduation. This policy lays out the requirements to graduate from our school district, and we last revised this in September 2025. So the committee brought this policy for review due to a question related to participation in commencement among students who might participate in our different school activities like athletics or co-curriculars, but who aren't currently enrolled within the high school. We reviewed the graduation requirements in the policy, and we determined that students do need to complete academic requirements at our high school in order to participate in commencement. And the reason for this is that the core purpose of commencement is to distribute diplomas to students who have completed their graduation requirements at our high school. This doesn't mean that students who participate in sports and co-curriculars can't be honored in other ways. But as a committee, after reviewing this policy, we felt that they did need to complete the academic requirements within the high school to participate in commencement. Anything to add to that? Okay. We're going to move on to second reading then. So can I have a motion and a second to bring policy and regulation 5516, use of internet-enabled devices, for second reading, please?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, great. So policy, guide, and regulation 5516 address students' personal use of internet-enabled devices. So these include things like cell phones, smartwatches, and tablets, specifically during the school day. The policy was last revised in 2017, and the regulation is new to our school district. So folks here will likely remember that we brought the policy and regulation for first reading actually back in November. And at that time, we discussed as a board and as a committee, slowly moving towards a bell-to-bell policy, which is similar to what we now have in the middle school across the entire district by January of 2027. However, in the meantime, as many of you will have seen, Governor Murphy actually signed legislation in early January concerning student use of internet-enabled devices in New Jersey public schools during school hours. And this new law takes effect sooner than the initial timeline that we laid out. So this actually takes effect in the 2026 to 2027 school year. So that would be September. So the law generally requires the Commissioner of Education to develop a model policy that's applicable to students enrolled in grades K to 12 in the next 3 months, or the 3 months after the law was signed. However, we do know from the legislation that non-academic use of an internet-enabled device on school grounds will be prohibited during the school day. I think that we can expect a model policy to come down from Strauss-Esme in the next couple months as well, so we'll be able to review that as a committee. All right, so as a result of that, we have made some modifications to the policy and regulation for second reading, so between the first and second reading, to reflect this timeline of implementing a bell-to-bell policy for the upcoming school year. We've also noted in the policy that these devices will be prohibited while on school grounds during school hours, before and after school on buses, and during co-curricular activities with staff permission will be exempt from the policy. Note that there may also be exemptions made based on accommodations in a student's 504 or an IEP. So that's something that we'll be taking into consideration. So as our student representative actually noted, Ms. Riley scheduled student focus groups this month to get feedback on implementation of this policy. And there are different options for what this could look like. It could be yonder pouches like what we have at the middle school. There could be specific phone lockers, or they could be off and away in students' lockers. So she's going to be consulting with students and other stakeholders about what that could potentially look like, and really what the different factors are that we need to consider in implementing this policy. We also have to think about really students' flow through the high school, so in and out of the high school during the day. We have lots of students that sort of move in and out of the school. So we really need to think about the number of entrances needed with the different measures in place, and what this looks like if a student leaves for lunch or a VOTEC, for example. We also want to ensure that we implement this law, that students and parents fully understand sort of the why behind this policy. I think the committee really emphasized that this is something that's really important to us. You know, there's really a good deal of research at this point that demonstrates that stricter policies around use of internet-enabled devices can improve students' academic outcomes, potentially reduce cyberbullying, social media usage, and improve student mental health overall. So we believe this is very much in line with the work that this district has been doing to promote student mental wellness and digital wellness as well. So I'll just stop there and see if any of my colleagues on the policy committee have anything to add.
The other thing I was going to add was just to reiterate Dr. Lewiston's points. Like we are very aware of the implementation challenges with passing a policy like this. The other side I want to say is, and we will probably hear more and more about this in the coming months because this is a statewide law now. The letter of the law and the spirit of the law are not one and the same. The language in this law opens up essentially a district to really not change much of how they are going about enforcing a bell-to-bell ban. There's a lot of language, the definitions, shalls versus mays, that have quite literally made it it's really not that, it doesn't have too much teeth in it right now as it has been passed. And so the way we are going about implementing this law right now is to follow more of what the spirit of it is. So I do want to add that caveat because I'm sure there are going to be parents and students that talk with peers in other districts, and they're going to say, well, this was a state law. How is it that our district is seeing it differently than others? But there is a reason, and I hope other districts do follow suit and engage with it in good faith, but obviously they are their own boards, their own districts. They can do what they like.
No, I think that's a great point, Mr. Kapadia, and that's why I wanted to highlight that we'd been moving on this before the legislation ever passed. So, yeah, absolutely. Ms. Cotter, did you have any thoughts to add?
I just wanted to add what an equitable approach this is, going from middle school into high school, and also in defense of the children's attention. So we spend so much time talking about the fiscal budget, but the budget of someone's time to enable them to learn in an environment where the curricula has been built, the building has been built, the teachers are there, and for them to have an unnecessary distraction to learning, I'm thrilled that we're doing this.
Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. And I apologize if this was discussed. I just don't remember. Under all of the different offenses, we put consequences will be determined based on the nature of the offense. And I feel just a little uneasy about that. One, as a parent, I don't know what the consequence will be, or as a student. And how do we ensure that everyone is getting the same consequences, like that we're being equitable? One of our elementary schools, might do X and another might think Y is, the best thing for the same offense.
At the time, we were just leaving space for the high school to work with the students to come up with the consequences. At the middle school, the students helped to define what the consequences were, and they are very specific, and they're in the code of conduct. And this will also happen at the high school. And it starts with, warnings and, then, escalating to maybe a detention, and then your parent has to come pick up the device, those sorts of things. It'll probably be something very similar at the high school. But if I ask you to hand me your cell phone and you're using it and you're not supposed to, and you're openly defiant and disrespectful and maybe curse at me or something, that's a different level of consequence. That goes right to another level, right? So that's why there's that. Yes.
But also to just clarify, the policy is not, the consequences aren't in the policy. They're in code of conduct.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay. Bob, roll call vote.
Mr. Kapadia.
Yes.
Dr. Lilliston.
Yes.
Mr. Peters.
Very much yes.
Dr. Resnick.
Sorry, Fiona, but yes.
Mr. Slotman.
Yes.
Dr. Stiliano.
Yes.
Ms. Cotter.
Yes.
Dr. Genovese.
Yes.
Ms. Williams-Galliano.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Wonderful. Thank you all. All right. I would like a first and second to approve the February and March calendars.
Well, we are part of the calendars is to kind of bring you up to date that we should move the board meeting from the 16th to the 23rd at this point
Of March.
of March. Perhaps leaving room during the week of the 16th for a potential budget retreat. So maybe leaving the 16th on your calendars, but re-advertising for a meeting on the 23rd as well. Saying that, we have a long way to go between the 9th of February tonight and our next board meeting. So we'll take the easy one out and we'll say personnel is going to meet on the 23rd at 6 o'clock. Finance, we may, what I would suggest is we meet in February again. Dr. Treese and her team will be meeting over the next 2 weeks, discussing cuts, the projected cuts that were directed us to make last week. And we culminate that activity on the 19th with a full AC, or her cabinet plus meeting. So perhaps after that, either the last week in February, if it works for you, or the first week in March. We don't have to decide today if you guys want to look at your schedules.
So I can tell you the last week of February, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm not available. Other than that, I can probably make it. So if we want to meet that last week of February, it would have to be towards the end of the week. Otherwise, we can do, if we do it the week after, we can go.
I mean, you want to
for more.
shoot for March 2nd? No good for you. The whole week there. Okay.
How about 27th?
27th, I can't do.
How about 28th? Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry. Uh, 26 I can do. Thursday the 26th I can do. Yeah, later, not in the morning on Thursday. Yeah.
Can you do that? No. I mean, look, I can go virtual if you guys want me to. You guys can do it the following week.
Well, but hold on a second. That's a committee meeting. That's virtual anyway.
No, I'm going to be on the beach till time.
Well, I feel like that's not really an excuse, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Special day.
Yeah.
Birthday. Let's do it.
Ah, look at that. Start your birthday off right with a happy meeting, right?
Good. All right, Vicky.
So the only comment I have, I now have a standing work meeting Thursday mornings. So we can't do. What day of the week is that? Okay. I'm fine. Yeah. 16th, 8 a.m. sounds good. Yeah. March, yeah.
9 a.m. Okay, and Drew and John.
Yeah, while we were listening to the various travel plans of all the finance committee members, we came up with a date of March 5th at 9 a.m. Does that work for you, Dr. Treese?
All in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Okay, seeing none, calendars are passed. Any new business item or items? Okay, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and move into our second public comment section. And I'll just remind us all, members of the public are invited to address the board on any matter for a maximum of 3 minutes during this portion of the meeting. You're asked to state your name, address, and municipality. In response to your comments, the Board of Ed may respond or direct the superintendent to do so. The board may also opt to take the matter up at a future meeting so that the matter is researched by the district administration. Of course, the timekeeping rules still apply, and we'd ask you to sign in at the podium. Public comment is now open.
Welcome back up, Dragon. Suze Polinsky, Peterborough Terrace in Princeton. I am grateful to hear of the efforts that the district is making. I'm not the least bit surprised. I know that safety and support of student families is absolutely a priority here, and I'm grateful for that. I guess I would also like us to think about, and maybe more important to me, is the conversation for the kiddos who might think that they're unaffected by these events. We're a majority white district. We're a majority wealthy district. We're a majority lucky district. There are a lot of families here, maybe even the grown-ups, think that this doesn't have an effect on them. I know that my kids are thinking about it, and I know we just talked about digital devices. So whether or not you and your family think that things happening to brown or black or immigrant people in your country, laws changing in your country, affect you, you're watching it. These guys are seeing these things happen. They are watching them on their devices. And so I guess I keep returning to the opportunity that Dr. Treese made available for our students when she recruited some really thoughtful experts to talk about what seemed like a really far away, complex thing about the Middle East. Brought that to students, brought that to our community. And I think it was an incredibly relevant conversation for our kiddos, but sometimes it has to be on us to let them know that. So I guess I'm asking myself as a parent and my neighbors and you to think about what opportunities we might have, right? Because the vast majority of our district does not feel in danger right now. But when I hear people talk about the Hopewell bubble, I know they sometimes do it lovingly, but I think this is an example of the Hopewell bubble preventing your kids from learning the things that they need to be out in the world. So I would hope that we're making it safe for teachers to answer these questions and that we're supporting them. These are hard conversations to have, but we shouldn't be avoiding them. I would hope that we're asking kids to think about it. We have classes like race, class, gender at this school. We have classes like global issues. We have a bunch of kids taking AP Gov right now, right? I don't think we should be letting those classes run without engaging kids, if not now, when, right? If these high schoolers are not being asked to think about these issues and to take a shot at talking about hard stuff, when will we? And there are people at this table who have done that work for us in other times, and I'm grateful for bringing those questions in the pandemic. And I hope that the smart people here can think about how best to do it.
Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll turn to Dr. Treese and anyone else from the board.
Yes, and I love a good challenge, so I accept the challenge. We are and Dr. Plitzis can share the work that we do in this district to help support our teachers to talk about current events, not just what's going on in Minnesota, but current events overall are sticky. Our teachers have the freedom and the support to do that as long as they enter in those conversations, setting up structures where they're not guiding kids into a certain viewpoint, but they're just giving them the materials and the facts, and they come to the understanding on their own, right? And most human beings can come to right and wrong without you pushing too hard in one direction or the other, right? But my teachers continue to express fear because a lot of these conversations are polarizing and people get upset. I say that we have to do it anyway. And when it's something that they just don't really feel comfortable with, I've taken it on myself and I've done it, and I'm willing to do that for this as well, because I do want our kids to not live in a bubble. They're not. They're having these discussions on their own, and they're exposed to it anyway. So it needs to be an adult kind of facilitating that conversation and what they're saying, because what you're seeing on social media may or may not be the facts, may or may not be, giving you a strong interpretation of what's really going on. So yes, we'll take on that challenge and continue not just talk about this, but there's lots of topics of late that need to be discussed in our classrooms. So thank you for that reminder.
Wonderful. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, public comment is now closed. Thank you all. I need a first and second to move us into executive session.
Motion.
Oh, I need to point out that we'll be covering HIB issues and no action will be taken. Now I can take a first and second.
Motion.
All in favor? Any opposed or abstaining? Seeing none, we're now in executive session. As always, thank you for attending this evening and joining us.